Okay, so let's talk about some different threats to internal validity. Suppose we are doing a study, and the study looks like this. We have two different conditions. In this case, the conditions are going to be comparing two different groups of people. So we have group 1 and we have group 2. And let's say that we're going to give them some kind of treatment. So we'll give group 2 the treatment, and we'll give group 1 no treatment. Or we might give them some kind of placebo treatment to compare it with, but we don't need to worry about that here. So we're going to give group 2 the treatment and group 1 no treatment, and we're going to see what the effect is on the dependent variable. In this case, that's going to be, let's say it's something to do with mood. Maybe we want to see if we can make people less depressed. So we're going to measure the level of their depression, and we're hoping that this treatment will decrease that depression. So we're hoping for some results that look like this. We measure group 1, we measure depression levels in group 1, and we find that they are relatively high, and we measure depression levels in group 2, and we find that they are a bit lower. And so that we would like to take that as saying that our treatment caused a lowering of depression, that our treatment caused that change. And the question is, is that a valid thing to state? Do we have the internal validity to be able to make that conclusion? And there are some different threats to validity that could enter into the picture here. Anything that is different between the two groups. Well, one thing that's different is our treatment. Our treatment is different, and that's supposed to be different. And what we're trying to say is that the difference in treatment is causing the difference in depression. But if we have other differences in the environment, then those differences could be causing the difference in depression, the lower depression. So, for example, the time of day. If we measure people in group 1 at a particular time of day, and we measure group 2 at a different time of day, maybe there's something about time of day that impacts people's mood, and so that's having an effect. Or we might talk about the room that the person is in when we're measuring them. Maybe when we do this group, this happens in a very dark room, puts people in a bad mood, whereas this one maybe happens in a nice, bright, clean room that tends to put people in a good mood, because that's a difference other than our treatment, and it's a difference that could be affecting this dependent variable of depression. That provides an alternative explanation, and that means that is a threat to internal validity. So this could be time of day, the room, the lighting, the temperature, the experimenter themselves, the person, the researcher who is coming in to measure the person's mood. If if an experimenter comes in here and they're really a grumpy experimenter, and someone comes in here and they're cheerful, that experimenter's cheerful, that could cause a difference. So we have all these different places where we could have where we have differences in the environment of the study. These are sometimes called environmental variables. And anything that's different between our two conditions in terms of those environmental variables maybe becomes a threat to validity, to the internal validity of our study. Maybe it's a confounding variable because it provides, again, an alternative explanation for the difference that we're seeing. And so that means maybe it's causing that difference, not our treatment. We could also, instead of having differences in the environment, we could have differences in the people in the study, differences between the two groups that exist before the study even begins. In your textbook, they call these individual differences, meaning that before the study even begins, there's some differences between these two groups. So maybe when we assigned people to these groups, we did it in such a way that more depressed people ended up in this group and less depressed people ended up in this group to begin with. So when we measured the people in the second group and we saw that they had lower depression, that lower depression was because of pre-existing individual differences with people in that group that were already there. So this putting people in the group where we're putting people with a particular set of characteristics more in one group than the other, this we've seen as what we call assignment bias. or sometimes called biased assignment. And of course, if the people are starting out with different characteristics between the two groups, then that means that's an alternative explanation for why the groups are different at the end of the study. So that's a threat to internal validity, this idea of assignment bias.